Let's say you like the look of the new BYD Atto 3, but you don't need 300 horsepower or rear-wheel drive. Is the new 2026 update worth it? Now, the 2026 Atto 3 is available as either a front-wheel drive Ultra, which is the car that we have here, or a rear-wheel drive Premium. If you'd like to learn more about the Premium, you can check out our video on that car. But for this front-wheel drive model, everything down here remains very, very familiar. That's because this car continues to run a front-mounted electric motor, which produces 204 PS and 310 Newton meters of torque, giving this car the ability to go from 0 to 100 in 7.3 seconds. Powering this remains the same 60.48 kilowatt-hour LFP battery, which now has a small upgrade in terms of DC charging, allowing this car to charge from what used to be 88 now to 110 kilowatt DC, which means that 30 to 80% takes under half an hour. But AC charging remains a paltry 7 kilowatts, which means that you'll be looking at a charge time of just under 10 hours in order to get this car from dead to full. Also, range on the front-wheel drive remains at 420 kilometers on the WLTP cycle, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, in terms of the 2026 model year update, the front-wheel drive Ultra gets the same upgrades as the rear-wheel drive Premium, which means that we now get a reprofiled front bumper with a much smaller set of graphics for this sort of contrast paneling down here. The headlights also remain the same full LED units with automatic high beam, but the beam pattern has been adjusted in order to provide a much brighter, much more usable beam pattern when you're out on the road, which I think is a huge upgrade for this car because previously they were quite shite. Now, we still get this satin blade here, which I still think looks quite good, with a connecting light bar across the front. And overall, I do think that the upgrades to the aesthetics of the Atto 3 have been relatively successful, although as a whole, the car remains quite forgettable. But the thing is, the same allegation can also be leveled at the Proton EMA 7. Now, down this side, there are a couple of rather odd things I feel I need to point out. First starts with the rolling stock, and that's because the Atto 3 Ultra for 2026 continues to ride on 18-inch dual-cut dual-tone alloy wheels wrapped in Continental Eco Contact 6Q tires, identical to the 2025 model year vehicle. However, the wheel design is actually different between the Ultra, which is the one that we have, and the Premium, which is the rear-wheel drive, more expensive model. And that's because the more expensive car gets a single-tone finish done up in a dark grey, which I find to be very strange because to me, these diamond-cut alloys here actually look nicer than the ones on the more expensive car. And if you put them side by side, I think that this car would cost more because the wheels look more interesting. Aside from that, the front-wheel drive model is also the only Atto 3 that you can buy today that still comes with this applique here, which says BYD Design. That's because this is meant to sit on the charge port, which is on the other side fender, where you charge from here. Whereas the rear-wheel drive model has a charge point relocated to the rear fender. I don't know why they're not just getting everything together, but whatever. Now, aside from that, the side profile of the Atto 3 remains very, very familiar, where you still get sort of black paneling here, satin roof rails, which are functional, I should add, as well as a little bit of contrasting down there on the bottom. You still get a button-type door handle unlock here, although generally that's not really used because this car comes with sort of approach lock and walk-away lock, so not really function. However, compared to previous iterations of the Atto 3, there's been a significant update here. Because if you remember, this panel used to have this sort of satin silver, which was later done up in gloss black, with these sort of fin effect things going on here, which looked a little bit like fish scales. However, for the 2026 model year vehicle, this has now been redone in order to incorporate a quarter light here, as well as some black contrast paneling to give this car a floating roof effect. And overall, I do think that this is now a little bit more successful than before. But again, the Atto 3 was never really known for being the most stylish vehicle in its segment, and I don't think that's going to change with this update. Now, the rear of the Atto 3 actually sees some slightly more significant updates because this rear spoiler has now been reprofiled, where the third brake light now resembles a pause symbol. The bumper has also been reworked in order to match the designs of the one in the front in order to give this a slightly differentiated look. But the biggest change comes in the form of the taillights, which now have a completely different graphic and now have sort of this weave thing whatever, which we've seen on other BYD models. And overall, I do think that the back end of this car now looks a little bit more successful than it used to, and perhaps a little bit more remarkable, a bit more memorable compared to the outgoing model. Now, what hasn't changed for the Atto 3, however, is in terms of practicality, because even on this Ultra, you still get a standard powered tailgate, and behind that, you get a parcel shelf, which the premium model doesn't get, which I find to be very odd. But more importantly, in terms of space back here, it is exactly the same as it has been before, with more than enough space for 4 people or even 5 people's worth of luggage in a pinch. And more importantly, there is plenty of space underneath this boot floor to hide even more items. This boot floor can also be lowered in order to improve vertical space. There's nets on either side. There are no hooks in here, and the light has been moved back there, whereas on the rear-wheel drive model, it sits here. Yeah. You can fold the rear seats flat 60/40, which is great if you want to carry more things, but honestly, it's an Atto 3. If you've seen any content about Atto 3s before, this is all exactly the same. Now, the interior of the Atto 3 Ultra is shared with that of the Atto 3 Premium, which means that this interior now feels a lot more somber, a bit more mature. It now no longer has all of those ridiculous gym-inspired elements that it used to, and more importantly, the interior is no longer colored like some sort of weird drug trip, which is great because that's exactly what customers in this segment want. Now, if you'd like to learn more details about the interior of the Atto 3, you can check out our review of the Atto 3 Premium, which is already up on the channel, because everything in here is exactly the same. There is only one key difference I would like to point out between the Atto 3 Ultra, which is the one that we're in, and the Premium, which is the one that we've already reviewed, and that is not the screen, but the air conditioning. That's because in the Atto 3 rear-wheel drive Premium, you get dual-zone climate control. Both front seats are also ventilated, just like they are in this car, but the only difference in this is the climate control is single-zone. That's all. Everything else is the same. That means in terms of material quality, build quality, practicality, space, etc., it's all exactly the same, which is why I'm not going to talk that much now anymore. Look, it's the back end of an Atto 3! Which means it's exactly the same as the rear-wheel drive and literally every other Atto 3 that has come before it, except, as I said, the upholstery now no longer looks like an LSD trip. The material quality is all very good. We still have the funny door handles, and the center-mounted air conditioning vents still remain a little bit too low for comfort. You also get a single USB-C and USB-A port, and I will point out the USB-A port is so slow, it's not really going to keep up with a lot of modern devices. In terms of space, you can fit 3 people back here without too much issue. The center portion here is not that raised, and it is decently wide, which means that if you need to put a third adult passenger in here for like an hour-long journey, they shouldn't be too bad. Floor is completely flat, plenty of knee room, plenty of headroom, space for my feet underneath the front seat, door pockets, seat pockets, oh, center armrest, cup holders, ISOFIX mounts, decently long wheelbase, decently large doors, can fit rear facing child seat without too much issue, but it may butt up against the seats in front of you. No ISOFIX mounts on the front seat. Basically, this is an Atto 3. The reason why I'm rushing through this is because the majority of the changes that need to be talked about aren't revealed here. It's revealed from the driver's seat and over 400 kilometers of testing. Now, the reason I say that is because the BYD Atto 3 has been on something of a world tour. This has ultimately been the model that BYD has chosen to arrive or launch in several international markets with, and therefore it's become something of a poster child for BYD. And much like our opinions of this car when it first showed up, it was rather lackluster. Yes, it was a mid-size family SUV that could be had for decent money while offering all of the technological advancements that you get with an EV. That's all very good. However, in terms of the way this car drove, its mannerisms, as well as a lot of the user experience, it just didn't feel very polished. And I suppose that now that many more markets have joined the chorus that arguably Malaysia started in terms of criticizing this car, BYD has finally responded. So, with this model, significant suspension revisions have been made in order to improve this car's on-road dynamics. Now, make no mistake, and I'd want to get this out of the way as early as humanly possible, the Atto 3 hasn't suddenly become a driver's car. In fact, I wonder if BYD is capable of even making a driver's car at this point. But what they have done is make this car feel a lot more confident. So for example, as I drive about at urban speeds here, the suspension remains very comfortable. But it's not comfortable in a floaty kind of way. Instead, the way I describe this ride is, it feels like it smooths over the very worst lumps and bumps while still allowing enough information to travel into the cabin. As a result, it means that both passengers and drivers will be able to appreciate the fact that you know what's going on with this Atto 3. You don't feel so isolated that it feels like you're controlling a video game. Now, this hasn't really come, as I mentioned, at the detriment of comfort, because as far as I'm concerned, this feels still like a very comfortable experience overall. I certainly wouldn't accuse the Atto 3 of being uncomfortable in any way. But again, it just helps to make this experience from within the cabin feel a lot more natural. I would imagine that as a result of this slightly more communicative suspension setup, you're less likely to make passengers feel sick, for example, because one of the things that the Atto 3 used to do a lot was, if you're driving over motorway surfaces where you might have big dips and rises and stuff like that, the car used to take a long time to settle down, whereas now, with this new suspension setup, it seems to have a single rebound rule to it, where it only takes one oscillation in order to get the car back to a more stable position. And that really does go a long way toward making this car feel a lot more natural and arguably a lot more comfortable as a whole. This also has knock-on benefits the way this car drives at higher speeds. Now, the old Atto 3 used to have god-awful body control. Any semblance of a corner and the car would lean like nobody's business. But now, it doesn't seem to do that anymore. There is some degree of body lean, yes, but it's not excessive. And more importantly, it feels, again, a lot more natural as a whole, which means that as a driver, you now feel a lot more confident. As a passenger, it no longer feels like you're on the stern of a ship, which is all, again, very positive news. The other thing that I suspect BYD has looked at, although they haven't admitted to it to the press, is that Refinement has also seen a little bit of an improvement with the Atto 3. Perhaps realizing that Atto 3 customers across the globe will be using their cars to travel long distances, for example, they have gone some way toward making this car feel a little bit quieter. So for example, at urban speeds, it's all very quiet, all very civilized, as to be expected. But the improvement comes at motorway speeds, where now it feels that there is significantly less road and wind noise, even at speeds of 110, 120 kilometers an hour, which means that if you are taking in a longer trip and you're considering a BYD Atto 3, the new one at least, you will appreciate the fact that this more refined cabin means that this whole affair just feels a lot more polished, a lot more civilized, a lot easier to live with. Couple that to the fact that the steering now feels a lot more naturally weighted, and again, you end up with a package that is just very, very easy to live with, and it's a lot easier to recommend than what it used to be. And then comes this car's advanced driver assist features. Now, we have said before that BYD's ADAS functions are pretty decent, not great, but usable. And that remains exactly the same in this car. So when you are driving over longer distances, you will find that with the adaptive cruise control on, for example, the car will like to hop over sudden imperfections, things like, for example, expansion joints or speed lines, for example, where the car will sort of not understand fully what it's trying to do. That also seems to apply to the regen braking, by the way. So if the car is regen braking, if you're slowing down naturally and then you happen to go over a pothole or something, the car doesn't seem to fully understand what's going on, and so there's a brief lapse where the car stops regen braking, but it's relatively small matter. But more importantly, when you're driving in traffic, the ADAS systems in this car function exactly the way they're supposed to, which means that as you drive along and do whatever it is that you need to do, you will find that you can rely on the systems in order to take away a lot of the strain from your daily commute. That's all very well and good. But what I found most surprising in this entire affair is actually this car's powertrain efficiency. Now, when I first drove the Atto 3 when it came out, I want to say 3 years ago, we remarked at the fact that because this car wasn't the most efficient thing on the planet, it meant that the 60 kilowatt hour battery would only reasonably deliver a range of about 350 kilometers thereabouts. However, things seem to have changed for this car. Now, I'm not sure, again, what exactly has been done to it, because the engineers at BYD are not the chattiest people in the world. They don't like to talk about lots of things, and as a result, I can't get a definitive answer. But it feels like some revisions have been made to the powertrain, either in terms of hardware or software, in order to make this a much much more energy efficient vehicle. So for example, where this car used to average anywhere between 19 to 21 kilowatt hours per 100 in our testing, this car is now reporting a cumulative average of 16 kilowatt hours per 100, and over the last 50 kilometers, this car is reporting 15.1. We've actually seen this consumption number go all the way down to single digits when driving through particularly challenging stop-start traffic, which means that, again, changes have been made, this car has been continually improved, and now it feels like a much easier package to live with overall. This is all very good because it does mean that this car has a real-world range of about 400 to 450 kilometers. The latter number actually exceeds this car's WLTP claim, which is all very good, which means that if you're looking at Atto 3 as an urban commuter, you should be very happy with this all around. And all-around, or all-rounder, is sort of the phrase that I want to latch onto, because the Atto 3 impressed when it first arrived because it was a consummate all-rounder. This is a sort of car that would appeal to young professionals, it would appeal to families, it would appeal to the elderly, for that matter, people looking for just a little car for them to do their daily errands in. And I think that the Atto 3's appeal in that regard remains very steadfast. This is still a very easy car to live with overall, which means that all of the smaller improvements and refinements to this package just make an already decently compelling vehicle feel even more compelling. Now, make no mistake, the Atto 3 is now in a much busier marketplace than it used to be. This car now has to do battle with vehicles like the MG S5 EV, which is the driver's choice in the segment, as well as the Proton EMAS 7, which not only can be had as a plug-in hybrid should you so want to, but even as a BEV, that car is even more efficient and even more generously equipped. But I still think the Atto 3 has its fans. There is something to be said of the sort of people who like this kind of car because they have said many great things of their Atto 3. And I think that for the sort of people who are not necessarily looking for their cars to come with any sort of real character or color or pizzazz to them, I think the Atto 3 could be a very appealing package because it is very predictable, it's very likable, it's non-offensive by being boring. However, as I alluded to earlier, if you are shopping within this segment and you're looking for a car that is slightly better to drive while still offering all of the EV benefits that you're looking for, then there is, of course, the MG S5 EV, which in its current CKD, guys, is about the same price as this front-wheel drive model. And of course, if you're looking to maximize your buck, if you want a car that's even bigger, even more practical, and even more efficient, there is also the Proton EMAS 7, which also falls short of being interesting to look at, but at the very least, as a package, as a practical package, it does seem to make a lot of sense. But I think that you're not really losing anything with the Atto 3 anymore. This car does feel like something that is very easy to live with on a day-to-day basis because it does everything that it needs to do just right. It is not exemplary, it's not stellar, it's not extraordinary, it's just right. Like a microwave, it functions the way you expect it to, it does the job you need it to do, and it does so without any fuss or without any issue whatsoever. And I think that for a good family car, for something that you want to be predictable and as unsurprising as possible, the Atto 3 does seem to make a very good case for itself. In any case, that concludes our review of the 2026 BYD Atto 3 Ultra. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon to notify every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the links are in the description below, including the link to join our new WhatsApp channel. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay safe, and jangan bodoh.